Hello, and welcome to the newest episode of Borderline Podcast Disorder. It's me, Levi, and I'm really happy to get this episode out for you folks because I had a lot of fun recording with Taddy, and the conversation was brilliant. I'm sure you're gonna, well, I hope you're gonna love it. As much as I loved recording this. But obviously, before we get there, a little, I don't know, is it like a review of the week? Because it's been a lot going on recently. I'm still, struggling with some stuff. I've made some pretty big decisions about what's gonna happen moving on, and then I should be okay with sharing it with everyone in about a week or two. Um, because I've been in probably, I think last week I've had the worst, and even at some points this week. But last week is probably the lowest I've ever felt in a very long time. I think it's since before I started recording this podcast, or actually it's since around the time when I came up with the idea of creating the borderline podcast disorder. That was a result of me not feeling too good about myself, and struggling with. I think it was a mixture of identity as well as just the self worth, you know, and that's it felt like it was fixed, or it felt like it was better for again, oh, about a year or so, and then yeah, then certain events, which again I can't talk about it just yet, happened, and that just put me in such a difficult position, and it just made me question everything. I think about me, about my self worth, thing came back, and it was like hitting me really really hard, and it was so difficult. At a couple of times I thought about um checking myself into a hospital for a while. The only reason why I didn't is because I just didn't want to be away from my partner and from Pickle and Sarma, and but I think that not feeling like I have the power to get through, these thoughts that I had, which it's something to do with, and obviously the trigger warning is there, was about questions whether I should, right, do I still want to, be around. It was there were some like suicidal thoughts, and again they kind of escalated. Although I gotta mention this, I have not, there was no harming of myself or anyone at all. But it was just that, again, those thoughts were just like coming very fast and very quickly, and well, actually that's the same thing. But yeah, it was just, it just felt like I didn't trust myself for a while, and then I thought, I might need to be, um I might need to be under, observation. I need to be in a hospital for a bit, and have, that sort of watch, I guess, or like that, to be under that sort of observation. But well, it worked out, in some ways. I spoke with my therapist. I think I've seen her twice in a week. Now we're going back to our regular 1 week meeting. I'm also seeing my psychiatrist next week, so um, things are moving, and there was a lot of um, skills being used, and a very classic. Uh, at least for me, it's a classic. Of thinking about people around me and thinking about people that I care about, and what's right for me ultimately, but what's right for me and for them, or what aligns with everyone basically. And it was weird because I didn't feel as powerless, and I think that was a scarier thing, where you kind of like things have been going on really well for the past few no well for this year, for example, besides of the health scare, and then the health has got better since summer. But then I had those issues that again I can't. It's something with like my day job. I can't talk about it just yet. But everything else seems to be great, and then this is happening, and then it's the financial tool, that it takes, and then it's about like all the pieces that involves, especially now, especially with like this, you know economy, and everyone's struggling, and well, at least I can't speak for everyone, but I can tell you for sure that I'm struggling. I sometimes, and for a very long time, I had to say no to gigs outside of London, or gigs that I couldn't genuinely afford going to, because I this is the kind of decisions that I had um, to make, throughout the year. It was a lot of because I'm still a new comedian. Um, I'm still a yeah, I'm still doing a lot of free work, and just to get out there, and which is fine. I understand this is the way it is, but yeah, sometimes you just can't do it. Sometimes I had to be um, thinking that, look, I can't spend this much money because I don't have this much money, and then to make everything even worse. Uh, yeah, it was tough, and it's still, again, it's kind of better. I feel like I'm slowly uh, recovering, and I couldn't be more grateful to my partner, for the help, that again, the understanding and the help that she's offered me. And I also feel like Sarma and Pickle have been just um, so important through this process of keeping myself together, to yeah, just amazing reminders of I want to say people, and is it creature? I don't know the word for living things, but I don't know. I feel like that sounds worse. That the impact that they have, and the unwillingly. I don't think. But even some nights, I wasn't sleeping, and I like my insomnia escalated quite a bit, and it's very unlike them. They're very they like to get pets and stuff, but under their own terms. While recently, from time to time, I'll just like be sitting on a couch feeling miserable, doing nothing for hours, and then they will just come around and yeah, like bump their heads into me, and I'll give them pets and stuff like this. Which again, it's It's not normal. Like it's not their like standard behavior, and yeah, those little things they have no idea. Although they're actually like lingering around the room while I'm recording this, but I'm pretty sure they. And I don't know to what extent they understand the language of the queen and or the king now, but no, yeah, definitely. Or like it feels like they kind of figured out that something was wrong, and they've been just so adorable. But I've talked to you for a while now, and I feel like it's we've ended this intro in a positive note, I guess. Although things are still happening, I'm still there are still some things I'm struggling with, but I'm getting the support I need, and I've been very open about it. Although I feel like listening to the previous episode, I was very it was very hard for me to basically like talk about things, and to I was still processing everything that's happened. Well, now I feel like it's hopefully a bit more clearer. But where was I going with this? Yeah, I got it. So I've got a lot of hope that things will work out, and I know that I can trust myself again to do the right things. I can trust I trust the people around me, um, and that's huge, and I'm very grateful for it. And it's very I feel like it's a privilege. I think it's a privilege to even have people listen to me talking about this. So for everyone listening, I really appreciate you, and I am going to shut up for now and let you enjoy the episode I record with Tadi. And you'll see her social media in the bio in the summary of the episode. Um, check out her work, and I think just check out her socials, because she's just a wonderful person. Again, it was again it feels like a great privilege to have all these like cool people in the podcast, and record with, and have time to chat with them, and sometimes record. I record most of the conversation, but sometimes even the things that happen outside of that recording just make I don't know, just I feel like to an extent, it makes the world a better place. And yeah, look, folks, listen to the episode. um this is the last time. I know this is the third time I said I'm going to shut up, and this is the last time I'm going to say that I'm going to shut up. So enjoy the episode. I'll catch you at the end. Bye. Okay, so Tadi, how are you?
Good things. Hi.
Hello. Thanks for coming today. I know you were saying the commute was a bit tougher, or like was a lots of delays and stuff like that.
Yeah, it was a bit of a problem. Got on, thought I was going to be early, and then I just stood still for 20 minutes,
No
which is
way.
exactly what you want in London.
Which I think, yeah, like waiting. No, like this, like rushing while waiting is no waiting while in a rush. I think is the one of the most
Yeah,
uncomfortable
yeah,
feelings.
yeah,
Because you like
it is.
sometimes I feel like I would just like, and not in a unhealthy way, but I would just like jump on a track and just run, on the line, just
Exactly.
because like I'm like, oh, I need to do something.
100%. Yeah. A lot of people were, yeah, getting really wound up. People were like shouting at each other. It was just like, none of us are going to make the train move by doing this. But yeah.
Yeah, that's true as well. And because are you from London?
No, I'm from Zimbabwe. But I moved to the UK about 10, 11 years ago. I moved to Scotland, and then I moved to London, in and out of London for like the last 6 years. So I love London life, but at the same time, there are moments that you're just like, no, no, I can't do this anymore.
And is London the biggest city that you've lived in?
Um, Kind of. So I've lived in a few places. I lived in South Africa. I lived in Nigeria. I think Lagos is bigger than London, but I'm not
No
entirely
way.
sure. I definitely in people, yes. And then I lived in Scotland in Aberdeen, which is tiny. Is I mean Scotland's so beautiful, but Aberdeen is not a place I would recommend anyone to go to.
It's so gray.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
everything. I remember also that was 1 month after I came to England, barely speaking English. And I was already struggling in Manchester with like deciphering accents.
Oh my goodness, no.
And then I went to Aberdeen for work for 2 weeks. And I swear to God, like everything felt gray. Like the sky was gray, the buildings were gray, the parks were gray somehow.
Everything is just like the granite is just
Yeah.
too much sometimes. And like I think the probably the shock of the language as well, because I was living in South Africa before I moved to Scotland, and I was 17, and I was like to my parents, I was like, just leave me alone, I want to go to university, like I'm a grown up now. And the first person that I met was like a cleaner for the university halls, and I did not know that in Scotland to say yes, you say like, oh, I. So I was like, called my parents. I was like, oh my goodness, everyone speaks like pirates. Why did you leave me here?
Everyone speaks like
Yeah. I was like,
like
oh, I, oh, I. I
yeah.
was like, oh my goodness, what are they saying? Is that yes? Is that no? What is
So yeah, where is
happening?
Jack Sparrow? You know, just
Exactly. It's like Pirates of the Caribbean time.
yeah. Oh my God. It's very strange because then, but that again, like the whole thing where, and again, I feel this was one of the things I found quite nicer about Aberdeen was that at least I feel like in Manchester, although I was struggling with the accents, um, people just like they wouldn't give a fuck, like people
Yeah.
would just keep talking as if like again, which in one hand was like, you basically gotta like pick it up.
Yeah.
While at least in Aberdeen they were trying to like,
Yeah.
be like slower and they would try to like repeat things, but then it's only so many times that you can
Yeah.
ask
Like
someone
after
to
the fourth
repeat
time, you're
themselves.
just like,
Yeah.
yep, I don't know what you said,
Yeah,
but
where
you're
it's
gonna
like,
nod.
am I like signing up for broadband? Am I signing up for like a church? I don't know, but
Don't know, just
yeah, I
say
was just like,
yes.
yeah, 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 and
Or oh I.
yeah, and oh god, it was just. But again, yeah, no, that it's funnily enough that yeah, that's what I went. So wait, so you went then from um South Africa to Scotland, but have you been to England before you made the move?
Yes. So
Okay,
I had a quite a
I mean UK. Sorry, not
yeah,
to upset anyone in Scotland.
yeah, sorry, Scottish people. Great Britain and Northern Ireland, I guess. Sorry, can you repeat the
Yeah, of
question?
course.
I've
No, the question
forgotten.
was, have you been to the UK prior to you going like, hey, you know what? I'm going to uni and I want to go in.
Yeah. So I remember what I was going to say. So I've had quite a privileged life in the sense that my dad worked for a telecoms company in the 90s and like basically built most of the telecoms networks around Africa and
No way.
in like Australia and Fiji, all these things. So growing up over summer holidays, because we had to move around a lot, the company would pay for like an opportunity for you to maybe to have two business class flights everywhere. And I come from a family of six kids. I was confused that. But yeah, I have five siblings. There's six of us. And so instead of us going back home, our parents would always like pick crazy destinations so that they wouldn't have to pay for the flights for all of us. So we would go and spend summer holidays in Australia. We would go to America. We would go to the UK. And my mom's family, a lot of them lived in the UK then. So we would like come and spend entire summers in the UK. So I kind of had like a little bit of a sense of what the UK would be like, or at least England. And I'd never been to Scotland. I'd never been to Aberdeen. And I just rocked up there when I was 17, just like, I'm going to do this. And I was studying fashion business management because I was kind of like at school, the kind of school that I went to, everyone like became a politician or like became like a
Interesting.
humanitarian. So I was like, I'm going to go study fashion. And like,
Huh?
a lot of people were like, you're dumb and you're going to fail. And then I was like, I showed up in Scotland, like, really, like, I'm going to just nail this whole thing. And did studied fashion, did my degree, absolutely loved it. Even had a fashion company in London when I was like 19 in Notting Hill. And then it didn't work out because business is business. And then yeah, I just kind of was like, what do I do with my life next? And then transitioned into kind of getting into like trying to channel all these different levels of creativity. So just like randomly going to anything, saying yes to every single opportunity that came, and then like trying to, I guess, figure out who I was creatively, figure out who I was as a person. Um, but yeah, traveling around a lot, a lot, a lot.
You know, you were saying the thing about like being quite privileged about like with your dad's job to be able to travel around, but also I imagine because you were saying being like born in Zimbabwe, then lived in you say Nigeria, South Africa, so you lived in like all these places. Then it means that you have to kind of start over, in all these
Yeah,
places with like lots
yeah.
of friendships and stuff like this growing up, which I
Yeah.
imagine it was not easy. And then also at 17, actually, that's funny enough, that's the time when I moved to England as well.
Oh
When
no
I
way!
when I
When you
turned
were
17,
17.
yeah. But still, it's like such an a bizarre thing to not bizarre, but again, it's not easy, to just like just move,
Yeah.
all on. And then how what was that like? Like, how did you were you all very like easygoing person? Was it easy for you to like make friends growing up? And I guess, yeah, or was it were those changes quite difficult?
So I think at the beginning it was quite difficult. Like the transition, the first move we did, I was 3 months, was to Botswana. So I don't really remember that one. But then when I was kind of a little bit older, around like 7, 8, I then moved to Nigeria, which was like so shocking. New school, new everything. And then I got stress induced dyslexia. So then, because it was just like when I was learning everything, it was just too much. I couldn't understand anything. So like got insane amounts of anxiety that came off the back of that. So I think I was first diagnosed with anxiety, general anxiety disorder at 8, and have tried to navigate it. Thankfully, my parents are super on top of it. My mom is like a special needs teacher, so that was kind of convenient. And then also my parents are really pro mental health. So if they were like, okay, this is how you explain these things, this is how you explain those things. So I think over time, because we moved around so much, I kind of was able to build that resilience and like create a routine. And like, if I was feeling anxious, it was something that was taken seriously. So then by the time I was 17, I was kind of like, okay, I have all the skills that I need to be able to take on the world. And it was really, really exciting. I guess the idea of like starting my own life, having my own identity was more exciting to me than like the stress of moving. But at the same time, I think you probably even experienced it when you moved here. It's like there's this like kind of like a really thin line between what you're expecting and what you think is going to happen, and then like what the reality is of
Yeah.
moving to a different country. Because you're like, oh my gosh, everyone's going to want to be my friend, I'm going to have the best time. And then you get there and everyone's like, oh, you're so weird, we don't know what you're saying. And you're like, how do I navigate this? How do like, and you don't, it's kind of hard to get into it. But I think being in Scotland was amazing because like all my friends' moms and like all of my friends in general, it was way more kind of community based and like supportive. If I couldn't go back to South Africa during like a school holiday, everyone would be like, come to my house. And like,
No way.
yeah, really pushed into the Scottish culture. So I love Scotland so much for
That's
that.
amazing. Where where
Yeah.
where did you what were like the I guess the most like random places around Scotland that you went to where you say like you didn't have I'm referring to stuff like people go like Loch Ness, because it's like
Yeah.
so popular. But
Yeah.
have you been somewhere where you're like, I would have not gone here if my mates weren't from around here?
Definitely Dundee. Dundee. I
Fair.
don't ever have you ever been to
No.
Dundee? I would probably not recommend it. The people from there are lovely, but the actual town itself, it doesn't really have much of a soul, and it's kind of a confusing kind of port town that was never developed, but people still live there.
Interesting.
It's literally across the water from St. Andrews, which is everybody knows St. Andrews for the
Yeah.
golf, for the university, everything. So yeah, they call it Scumdy. I didn't say that. I'm not Scottish, but yeah, it was. I highly do not recommend going there. But
That is, yeah, but then you would have not, and then you were again, like you said, which is actually, I think it's like such a beautiful thing, to get these people who are like, oh, you know what, come and enjoy the holidays with us. That's
exactly,
so cool.
yeah, yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No,
Sorry.
no, that was it. And then, so when did you start? Because for context for everyone listening, you're a poet, right?
Yeah.
So when did you start? Like, or like, how did it, like, how, because you were talking about, like, taking picking up fashion to go to uni at 17, and that's a again, that's already like a creative outlet, right?
Yeah.
Was that your first outlet? Was it some, like, what was your first, I guess, so yeah, sorry, before we answer how did you start the poetry, doing poetry, what was your first creative outlet that you remember growing up?
Oh, so again, this kind of goes back to my parents. My dad is businessman, but you used to be an art director, and they actually met. My parents met because my dad was an art director on a Coca-Cola ad, and my mom was the model.
No
And
way.
yeah, so they met because the main male model for the shoot was drunk, and then my dad stepped in because they were like, we just need somebody to get this campaign out, and then they met that way. So for my parents, creative space is so important. Being as creative as possible is important. Like my mom was an actor as well, so like we were always exposed to theater. Like they also passed us, so like we'd always be in church, so we'd do every single Christmas play, every single like Easter play. We were encouraged to do dance classes, encouraged to do like performance classes, fashion, everything, anything that you can imagine creatively. My parents forced us to do it. I
No
know that
way.
it's usually the out the way for other people. I thought that I was going to be a musician when I was in school, and I did something called an international baccalaureate, and studied music. And a lot of the people that were in my music class went off to Juilliard. They went off to all of these like top music schools in the
No
world. But
way.
I was like, I kind of want to do fashion. So for me, it was kind of like I've always been exposed to creative things. I know how to do things professionally, creatively. I'm actually even a trained opera singer. I
No
haven't.
way.
I don't. Please don't ask me to sing
No,
now.
I wouldn't. I wouldn't. I wouldn't. I wouldn't. Don't worry. But
But yeah, so music. I would say to kind of roundabout way to answer your question. Music is probably the first way that I channeled my creativity. But I was like exposed to so many things. Even growing up at school, like I came to London for theater, and I went to like see. I think it was like 5 days of theater, and we were doing like training classes and going to all these shows. So creativity has always been there, but kind of to answer your second question about how I ended up being in poetry is like every creative, I got a job because it was like the fashion thing hadn't worked out with my company and my business partner. So I was like, okay, dad, can you help me get a job? A little Nepo baby. But I got an opportunity to work for one of Africa's largest telecoms companies. And I started off as an intern and really grew to love it and really grew to love technology and found it so interesting. And that's my more professional trained space, but I was always kind of dabbling into creative things on the side. Um, so then it was something that I realized in the corporate space was like, oh, okay, like I'm doing all this tech stuff. It's great, but I want to figure out how to be creative about it. And I had a manager who's a really good writer and journalist. And I was like, oh, I want to be good at writing. So I reached out to a friend who I knew is really good at writing. And I was like, can you teach me how to write? So her and I would meet up and she would show me how to write and I would go to all these places and do all these writing exercises and things like that. And then eventually I had a really big heartbreak. Um, as you do. I thought I was gonna marry somebody, it didn't work out. And moved to the seaside as any dramatic artistic person would
seaside.
do.
Which seaside?
Kent and Hythe. Sorry, yeah, Hythe in Kent.
London, UK.
Yes, in Folkestone.
I have no idea what.
Yeah,
I'm
no
so
one knows
sorry.
where no one knows where it is. But it was really beautiful and I moved there and I moved to this like random retirement village and there was no Wi-Fi. So my friend who I write with, she every year she writes a book and she was like, you should write a book. I was like, that's crazy. Like never. And she kept being like, you should write a book, write a book. And then I was like, I don't have internet, I don't have TV, fine. And I was waiting for 3 weeks till they could connect me. So I was like, every day I was writing, and she's like, just write a little bit every day. And then I ended up writing about all of my heartbreak. And then I was like, oh, this is like just like so one sided. I don't want a whole book to be about one person. So I went and reached out to all my exes and I was like, hey, what was it like dating me? And then they gave me,
No way.
yeah, sorry, your face. Yeah, you
That's
that reaction is pretty accurate. Yeah, I reached out what is it like dating me and did interviews of them, wrote poems to align with what they like the feedback that they gave. It was like a really cathartic experience because different people across my life had like similar feedback. So I was like, oh, I need to work on these things about myself. Like it's really interesting. And then I sent it to my friend to be like, hey, so I did the whole book thing that you were talking about, like read it. And she was like, I really like this. And then she was like, I think you should submit it to some publishers. And then I was like, okay, weird. And then I just Googled the first publisher online, submitted it to them, and then they picked it up, which is kind of how I fell into becoming a poet. And it's just more like the attitude of like, I'm a creative person. I don't know how creativity is going to find me, but I'm just going to do it. Which I think is probably the best attitude towards creativity that
yeah, for
anyone can
sure.
have. Because I think when you start saying no to yourself, then you'll never do it. But if you say yes, you'll be surprised by how far you can. You're when you throw a stone, how far it can go. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into poetry.
Wow, there is so much to to
Yeah.
ask. I have loads of questions based on this, but then let me think what would be okay. The first and like the most intriguing one is how did it feel to like again to reach out like to all these people that you or the people that you've dated in the past and going like, hey, please review me or like review
Yeah.
our experience. Yeah, what was that like?
It was weird. I was like, there's like the hyperventilation, and then you're like, what am I doing? I'm crazy. And it's like, don't worry, I can just throw my phone into the sea after sending the message. But yeah, it was really, really helpful because I think more than anything, what surprised me, because usually you kind of like, I'm done with that chapter of my life. It's like, actually, these people meant something to me at some point, and the fact that they're responding
Fair.
is like they respect and honor kind of what we shared. Also, I think it was really nice that they were able to say things to me like just like blatantly. A lot of it was quite positive, and it was kind of like, oh yeah, I really enjoyed this. Like, I'm thankful for the time that we shared, but at the same time, like the things that sucked really sucked to hear. And also, it was kind of weird because there was like a relationship from when I was even a teenager, and having like so much healing and closure and understanding from both sides. We were like, what this how what like
Oh wow.
how can we like resolve all these things? And sometimes I guess when we're adults we forget how much things that when we're like things that happen to us when we're younger can impact the decisions and the way that we see the world when we're older. So kind of understanding, oh, okay, this is what was happening, and having a conversation under the lens of maturity as well was like it was completely different because I think I hadn't even spoken to him in like 10 years. And I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
hey, what was it like dating me?
That
Um,
wow.
it was something I highly recommend it. Also, it's really a really big test, like in your mind, being like, whatever this person's gonna say is gonna be their accurate reflection and perception of me. And I have to respect that. Even if I disagree with something that they say, I need to like take this in. So I think I recommend it.
What's the because you're what's the name of the what's the name of the book or like where do people find this if they want to read it?
So, because of the nature of the book, I keep postponing the publishing date of it. But I think in my mind, I'm ready for it to come out in spring 2025.
Nice.
Just because I'm single now, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want like whoever my future partner is to be able to read all of my dirty laundry. That's fantastic. Yeah, but it's called Private Parts, Poems on Intoxicating Intimacy. And yeah, once it's available, mainly social media, and also I need to talk to the publishers about what distribution houses they have. But yeah, mainly online. I think online is a little bit better than trying to push it in a store.
Fair.
Um, but yeah, I'll put it on social media as soon as I know.
Fair. Well, that's going to be an interesting read. Yeah, it sounds so interesting, especially because, like you said, from the I think a part of me was like, oh, I kind of, I wish I could do this, but actually, I'm like, no. Especially, I know at times when I, I wasn't happy with myself, but then obviously there was no way to, address it, and I can see what I can imagine what the feedback would be, and I'm
Yeah.
like, but also I feel like it's very healthy in another way, because I feel like in ultimately it's it's important to have, like you said, that I mean, I don't know actually, because I wouldn't say it's important to have the closure. I wouldn't say the closure, but some maybe for some people it works out better to just understand why things went the other way. I think sometimes it's important for some people to have that, like I guess the I guess like a conversation
Yeah. Yeah.
while I don't know. I feel like in some situations it helped me out a lot. It helped me out, but in some other relationships, I'm kind of glad that's like
Yeah.
it's
Done.
done, it's
Yeah.
sealed.
Yeah.
We're not opening that box again.
Yeah.
Although I say that, but then in the other hand, I think, but again, that's from when I was a teenager. I had like a really bad um, breakup from my only serious relationship at the time. And no, it's fine, but we haven't spoken for like 5 or 6 years. And although I kind of like tried to be like, hey, I'm really sorry for everything.
Yeah.
Nothing, no, and I think I gave up maybe like 5 6 years after, just because I was like, okay, fine. But again,
Yeah.
not in the sense that I was like pestering the said person, but I was like,
Mm.
I would try to, like, say we were walking on the street and I'd see her, I'd be like, waving, and then she wouldn't and stuff like that, and I'm like, okay, fine,
Yeah.
I get it, but
Yeah.
when I think that's the only one where I'm like, again, I'm sorry for the fact that we couldn't have had the set, or like I'm sorry for the fact that I can't I guess, but in one hand I want to say I'm sorry that I can't make sure that she heard my apology, or like she understands that I
Yeah.
feel, but then in the other hand I'm like, I'm sure she did
Mm. Mm.
to an extent, and also we were both responsible, but anyway, yeah, you
Yeah,
see,
no, but
it's this.
exactly. I think that, like you've touched on so many things that I've like kind of learned in the process. Like one is like forgiveness is a two-way process. You can ask for forgiveness and it's at somebody else's discretion to give you forgiveness, but you can resolve that within yourself. You don't always need to go out to people to get
Yeah.
forgiveness. Especially if they're not ready to accept it at the time. I think the other thing is like kind of there's so much like grace and love that you actually will have because somebody gets to know you in like a certain level where it's like, okay, well, these are the things that this is, I care about this person for these reasons. So if you're in a place of like heartbreak and grief, there's like still going to be love and care that you have there. And sometimes like grief is something that I encourage everybody to learn about, not just when they're in the state of grief, but grief is something that affects all of our lives across the board, and different people process it differently. And heartbreak is a form of grief. And ending a relationship is the death of a connection with
Mhm.
somebody else. So if you're having heartbreak, it's really important. Like, yes, you can talk to somebody, but you don't have to talk to everybody. Everybody's gonna has their own decision that they can make about how they choose to process grief. Some people ignore it, they pause it, and it comes out in like really harsh scenarios where someone's like, ignore, and it's just kind of like I personally wouldn't recommend that approach, but if that's what you're gonna do, that you have 100% freedom to decide how that looks for you.
That's a very yeah, that's a very good way of, I guess, like looking at it, where again it's like, and I think the thing that you were saying before, that you're like, no, although I disagree, again, I asked the question, I'm here to listen, I'll put like everything together.
Mm,
But yeah, it's about to, I guess, yeah, being open minded to the respect of listening, but then you can only like keep, or like you work on whatever you feel like it's valuable to you, or whatever
exactly.
matters to you. And I think that's, I'd
Exactly.
like to think that that's what I've done historically. What I was
Yes.
like, I know I'm not very happy with this. Well, I haven't done. I'm not happy by the way I've handled X, Y, and Z. Next time when it happens, I'll handle it perhaps in this way, and
Yeah.
But oh, there was another question that I was going to ask you, and I forgot.
No problem. No problem. It'll come back. It'll
It
come
will
back.
come back, but yeah. Well, this is so. Also, how did you get why can, like, what was, how did you make the decision to where the city that where you're gonna like leave?
in Kent.
Yeah.
Oh, so I was the heartbreak and everything was happening when I was in London, and I had this beautiful place in Peckham, but I was like, this is too many memories. I need to get out this space. And I had a dog at the time. Unfortunately, she's passed away.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. But I had my dog, and I was in lockdown. I was spending a lot of time on my own as well, post pandemic. And I was like, me and my dog, we need to get out of here. And I have some family that are in the seaside there.
Ah,
So I was,
okay.
I hope the government doesn't come after me for this, but I was kind of breaking the COVID rules at the time,
It's
and
okay.
taking a train for like 2 days to just to be with people, be with my family. They
Yeah.
had like a massive space, not too far from the sea, so that we can like, we see the go to the sea, go to the water, just improve mental health, overcome the general anxiety. Because even before lockdown happened, in March 2020, in February 2020, I had a really bad mental breakdown where anxiety was like 100.
Way.
And I was like, I can't let myself get to this point again. And like, I couldn't work, I couldn't do anything, I couldn't even go to the grocery store because my mental health was so severely bad. So I was like, I can't do this again. I'm going to keep going to the seaside, because I was like, it really relaxes me and centers
Yeah.
me. So after the heartbreak happened, I was like, we're not going down this route. We're gonna go to where we found happiness and peace during lockdown, the seaside.
Mm.
And then I just looked on apartments online and then just moved. Like everyone was
Yeah.
like, "What is going on?" And I was like,
Yeah.
"I'm not
Yeah.
living here anymore." Move. Me and my dog, like we had to spend a few days at my friend's house. And it's quite funny because we were sharing me and my dog were sharing a room with my friend, which was very chaotic. But thank goodness for an amazing friend. But yeah, doing all of that was just like I need to just go to where I know that I have a base. I'm not like, even I think writing was also helpful because I was like I had nothing to do, nothing
Mhm.
to distract me, and I was like, I'm gonna lose myself again, or I can make a better decision on how to cope. And then I was like, okay, we're gonna go into writing. It's not for anybody. It's just for me. Um, yeah.
But then it's, developed from there where, funnily enough, this is similar to how I started doing comedy.
Really?
Yeah,
What was that
because
journey like for you?
I was basically I first opened up about like my uh thoughts and like my mental health
Mm.
in during lockdown. I think it was actually maybe May or June 2020. And then I think in maybe July, August. No, 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 no. It was later that year. Maybe, yeah, in the fall of 2020,
Yeah.
I got referred to see a psychiatrist, no, psychologist. And then sorry, I got referred to do therapy. And then I've picked, like, I picked up psychologist from the list that they gave me. I started speaking to him, and then as I was talking to him, because I there was so much to unpack, he was like, "Hey, why don't you just like write stuff down, like write
Yeah.
down your memories,
Yeah.
and then we can basically take it one by one, or like we can basically take it in an order, but it was kind of like just do a journal, but
Yeah.
just write, like, whenever you have random thoughts during the day when you're like, oh, I hate myself because when I was 7 I did this.
Yeah.
Like, okay, just write it down. And I started writing it, and then I remember like writing stuff, and I was like, oh, this is actually it's kind of funny,
Mm.
because I would have those stories about how I don't know, I would have a fight with someone over something, or I would like have a go at the teacher. I used to always see myself as a hero of some sort,
Oh.
where no, I wasn't, but that's how I would see myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I had this thing where I did, because I went through a time when I used to be like heavily bullied,
Mm.
to then not be bullied anymore. So then when I got to that point, because I became like popular, when I
Oh.
got to that point, I started picking on people who were bullying other people.
Yeah.
But then I would like go into the point of like, like, say if I were to see someone bullying
Yeah.
someone,
Yeah.
I would go to like roast them, and like I would basically, I think I would like shred them into pieces, and
Yeah.
and I felt so good about myself. I was like, oh, this is me, this is like, this
This
is
is my
what, like, I
gift. Yeah.
guess vengeance, looks like. This is, yeah. and I felt very good about myself
Mm.
for a while. But then, yeah, growing up, I was like, oh, that's such an asshole thing to do still, because I
Yeah.
could just be like, hey, that's not cool. But then to go to the point where I'm like, oh, and this you, and this is like your mother, and whatever. And I was like, oh God.
But everyone loves dissing when you're a kid as well.
I
Like
know.
teenagers, even talking to teenagers now, I'm like, oh my gosh, my whole self esteem got shredded right there, right there.
Although the thing is, I feel again, I have mixed feelings about it because in the other hand, I feel like my nephew, he's 18. But then a few years ago, so yeah, so sorry, before I do this, just to finish that, yeah, I started writing. I was like, oh, some of this stuff is funny. And then
Mm.
I thought, oh, maybe I'm gonna start writing like a stand-up set, like a comedy set.
That's so cool.
And then I would like FaceTime my friends, and I'd be like, hey, do you want to listen to like? And I remember basically we did like a comedy, like a FaceTime show,
Oh,
where
cool.
I've sent them a link to a comedian called Nate Bargatze. He
Hmm.
has a bit about Starbucks, and I was like, this is my this is my intro comedian. This is the the first act, the opening act. And
Oh,
then I'll be the headliner, and I send them just like 10 minutes video of like Nate Bargatze. I was like, okay, when you finish watching this, get yourself another drink, and then I'll open
oh,
the FaceTime.
so cool.
Um, and then I started doing this, and then again, like some stories, went on. Some stories I still keep. Like some of the stuff that I have there, I still to this date I use it because it works, and
Yeah.
it's yeah, like I have a joke about like the map where I come from based on like the way you look at a map, and that's a joke that I wrote from that time because
No way.
that's an analogy that my dad used to use
Mm.
about where we come from. So you see, again, some things from there stayed, but yeah, that's how he started. And then coming back to what was I saying before about like the bullying bit. Oh, I can't remember.
You were saying about your nephew being
Oh
a
yeah, my
young
nephew. So then,
teenager.
yeah, because that's the thing is you're saying like sometimes you speak with like I speak with like I guess like young adults or like teenagers, and I'm like, oh my god, I feel so terrible. But then in the other hand, the thing is that, for example, so yeah, that's the thing. I open up then I started doing therapy, but then I haven't told my family yet until maybe a year later. And then obviously like after, and then sadly around that time my mom died,
I'm
and
so sorry to hear
that's
that.
okay, and thank you. And then I basically, started like being again more like open about like how I felt, and
Mm.
I was like, I think that's when I kind of like started like posting stuff on social media about like
Mm.
mental health awareness and things like this, and I struggled with basically like suicidal ideations as well. So I was kind of like, okay, maybe although I've only officially and now not officially, but I officially like, opened up about it earlier last year. I was kind of like, just like hinting about like, oh, look at like how, things develop for other people, and how,
Yeah.
we got to like be careful and stuff like that. But then my nephew, 16-year-old at the time, I think, he goes like, hey, if you ever need someone to like talk to, I'm here to listen. And a part of me was like, thank you, that's really sweet.
Yeah.
Then a part of me was like, what the fuck am I going to talk to you about? Because you're 16. Like I can't complain about like my relationships. I can't complain to you about the
Yeah.
difficulties of living on my own. And I feel like a part of me was just so filled with rage. But I think the rage came from the fact that I thought, when I was 16, I couldn't give a fuck about anyone else. Because,
Yeah.
going like, oh, if you want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And then I was like, this is so weird now because you make me feel like you're so much better than how I was.
Yeah.
But yet, how is that possible? Because you're a kid.
Yeah, I totally get what you mean. Like right now, the younger people are having. Well, I say younger people. I don't want to expose my age. But like the younger, like kind of more Gen Z and younger generations are so much more emotionally aware. And I
Yeah.
think I love I work part time in finance and I read the Financial Times a lot. And there was this like article that was like on the Financial Times. It was like um Gen Zs are going for therapy, whereas older generations would resort to alcohol and drugs to deal with emotional turmoil. and it was kind of
It's
like
like
this whole
good or
piece. I know. I was reading it. I was like,
bad?
sometimes I'm like, Financial Times, what's going on, guys? It was like
Like, what's wrong with
it was
you?
like talking about like how alcohol consumption is like going down in the world, and
Oh
alcohol
no.
brands don't know what to do because people are talking about their feelings instead of resorting to alcohol. And I was like reading it, and I was like, you know what, these guys are doing it the right way. Like the rest of us would just be like, oh, let's go for a drink if you want to talk
Yeah.
about it. But like what you're saying right now about your nephew, he's like, if you have some stuff, let's talk about it. And I think the thing is like vulnerability opens up so many doors, like in terms of how you can connect.
And
You
yeah,
know,
sorry, go on.
yeah, just how you can connect and like feelings, and something that I've also found on this like poetry journey is like the more I talk about things that I'm going through, actually realize makes me realize how many more people are going through the exact same thing, but we're not always given the opportunity to speak about it. Even like comedy is amazing. I don't know how you comedians like write something so painful and make it so beautiful and make you want to laugh, but you're like, should I be laughing at that? But you're like, yes, I feel so much better about this. Um, it's such a gift. But like just how comedians and how just people who have the gift to write and storytell are able to transform like extreme pain into something that people can cope with and eventually laugh about.
I think this is, and again, I don't. I know sometimes it's not necessarily, but again, the way I look at this sort of thing is that I feel if you manage to get to the point where you can make, or at least to me, like if I get to the point where I can make a joke about it or I can laugh about it, then it makes me feel like it gives me a sense of, oh, you know what, it was worth going through it.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
know it's a bit
Yeah.
again twisted, and maybe again it's not for everyone, but that's just how I feel about it.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I mean, something shit has happened. It's happened anyway.
Yeah,
Might as
exactly.
well, have a laugh. Or, but then I've also noticed. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that I've also noticed that, for example, a couple of years ago, I was doing. I was in. I guess I want to say I was like in perhaps wrong medication, and I was very like the most miserable I've ever been. That at least like while I can remember for the
Yeah.
longest period of time, and I was I was going through some like very like dark thoughts, and I was writing what I thought it was, oh, just like dark comedy, and it was a lot about like my parents, and basically at the time I've noticed that when I was doing the same jokes that I'm doing now, the audience would actually look a bit like, oh my god, I hope he's okay, or like, just
Oh,
be like, I'll actually like scared, or
yeah.
not scared, but like they
Concerned.
worried, yeah,
Yeah.
concerned. While now I can do the exact same thing, and I get like laughter, and I get people like, oh, this is amazing, and I get,
Yeah.
you know, and I've noticed that the difference was at the time, I think I was still struggling with coping with my again, like dealing with like my parents not being around, and
Yeah.
with the difficulty of their relationship, because that's what I talk about in the
Yeah.
bit. And now, because I think I've managed to get, I wouldn't say past it because it's still there, but I
Mm.
made more peace with it.
Yeah.
It also transcends in how I do the set, and how
Present.
I'm like
Yeah.
presenting. I remember like at one point I had this bit about my dad getting bold, and going like, oh, I don't want to be bold, and sometimes people wouldn't like say he wasn't as, I wouldn't get the same reaction that I get now. While now I'm like, come on, guys, it's okay. He's my dad, like.
Yeah.
And I had the whole thing about like how he had this like long string of hair that he would just like take from one side of the hair to the other. I was like, what are you trying to fool with that? Like, what do you think we don't know what's happening
Yeah.
underneath? And I was like, well, I guess who do you think it's so stupid to take to believe that you have a full head of hair? And I was like, well, I guess my mom was that stupid, because
Oh,
she
yeah.
she
Yeah.
she fell for you. She fell for this trick, but not me.
Yeah.
um and you see, but that's the thing, and I've tried it so many times and in so many different ways at the time when I was going through, again, like still trying to deal with all this stuff,
Yeah.
and it wouldn't work. And then I've noticed that, although again some people can say, oh, practice makes perfect. I don't know, because again, I think it's a combination of, especially, yeah, with comedy, and especially with things that are like, it's something terrible or something bad that you're going through, and you
Mm.
have to turn it into something good.
Mm.
Then I feel like that, to me, kind of reminds me when the healing, it's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
happening, and it's on the right trajectory, because I've noticed that, like, I don't go and um I don't know, I don't go and thought vomit on stage.
Yeah. Yeah.
I make comedy. I'm trying to be like again this rather than trying, because I know that comedy is comedy, therapy is therapy, and comedy is comedy. Some
Yeah.
people think that comedy is therapy, which is not.
No.
It's
No.
it's not.
I've been to a few shows like that. You can definitely tell it's not.
Yeah, when you're like, oh god, like again, I think, yeah, like the audience should go like, oh my god, yeah, this is great, or like, how
Yeah.
funny is this, rather than, oh my god, we should check in on
Yeah.
on the
Is this person
individual.
okay?
Yeah,
Yeah. No,
that
but it's so interesting that you say that because I've only started performing this year, and I had a performance recently at the Troubadour, and I was really struggling to kind of get into my head because everyone else who was performing was a musician. I was really struggling to get into my head about some of the poems because, like, I have poems about different topics, and one of them is about like kind of being like a woman who like is a, like not like just like disrespected by a guy. Like I went on a date with a guy. I thought that it went really well, and then afterwards I was kind of like that was a bit lame. Like he kind of sucked, and it's just about that transition of feelings. But I just was not getting into it in my head, and I was like really struggling. And everyone's like, "Oh my god, you're gonna be so great! You're gonna be so great!" And like in my mind, I was like, I actually spoke to an actor friend about it afterwards. I was like, how do you do it as an actor? Like taking somebody else's words and having the expression and the feeling. But it's a bit different when you've written it in
yeah.
a specific mental space and you're talking to other people about how you feel. Sometimes you're like in it, in the element, like your storytelling is there, but sometimes you're like, I don't relate to the words that I've written or what I'm meant to be saying right now, but I have to do it because this is a people are paid to be here,
Yeah,
so I have to deliver. So I think sometimes like I 100% agree with like connect with what you're saying now. Like you're ready to talk about something and you're ready to share something, but there is an emotional element with the actual audience that you have that then you guys have to actually have that synergy for like in your case the bits to land, and for people to really connect with what you're saying, and they can tell they can tell.
yeah,
And something that my friend who's an actor says to me is like, people can tell when you're doing it for yourself, and they can tell when you're putting, including them in the journey. And I think that sometimes, like when you're actually creating something for to be experienced live, you need to think about how you're carrying people on the journey versus being like, this is an ego trip experience. So that like all of these people are gonna listen to how funny or how smart or how great I am versus being like, I want to share something with people.
that's a very good. That's such a nice way to say it, and to an extent, I feel like I've heard like similar things, or like I'd like to believe that because of like other things that I've seen, I have a similar-ish approach when it's kind of like, now it's, and it's because a comedian, I want to say friend of mine, is a brilliant comedian called Nathan Cassidy,
Yeah.
basically gave me this tip about how, when you go on, when he basically he told me about, like, when he goes on stage, he thinks about like those are people who they didn't pay for, say again, like when you go to, especially when you go to a comedy night where it's not your night, when you go
Yeah.
with like other
Yeah. Yeah.
people on the bill, and there people are paying to be entertained, people are paying to
Yeah.
laugh at a comedy show.
Yeah.
So it's not about trying to win, like, oh, I want to do my material. It's about
Mhm.
how do I, yeah, like, well, how do I engage with them, how do I make those people actually laugh, because again,
Exactly.
that I think there is a difference between making your own show and being like, this is my face on a poster, you come down and watch me. And I feel like that's probably where you can allow your ego to take over, because people know what they sign up for, basically.
Yeah.
But then when you go on, like you said, like on these nights where you're actually just looking for an audience, you're looking for those people that you hope to then go like, oh my god, you know what,
Mhm.
this person was really cool, I'm gonna, like, check their workout. Then that's when you actually have to, perhaps, yeah, like, put your ego second,
Yeah.
and first is, well, how do I make these people go, oh, I want some more of this, rather than,
Exactly.
who is this, get off,
Yeah,
sort of.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mean, 100% connect with that. And I think that like it is trying to find that balance between like being a performer and then actually being a creative person and creating art that people can connect with. Like I'm sure when you were writing your material and like dealing with grief, you weren't writing it like, oh, how am I going to say this to a bunch of random people that I've never met
Yeah,
and make them laugh? Like that's not where you're coming from. It's more like, okay, how is this something that I can express, how can I express what I was going through and how what I'm going through so that people can also hear it versus making it for them. But yeah, I mean, how have you found the journey, at least being in London, like growing as a comedian?
It was a bit weird, because I feel like with so when because I started in Manchester, and Manchester was like so, I don't know, it felt in a sense of people going, oh, we want you to do well, like come here, like come on, you know.
Yeah.
While when I came to London, it was very much of a, you gotta like, I need to see good stuff right now. Like people don't have
Mm,
the time, or like I guess maybe not the energy to like say, when you sometimes you're trying to like laugh or like give a reaction to someone just because you're trying to be nice.
yep, yep.
That wasn't the case in London. And when I came here, because I thought like I came here only with like 6 7 months of experience, but again, and I was kind of like getting into paid work in Manchester. It was really really good, it was very quick
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
I was like, oh, okay, cool. But then I thought I make the transition now because then, once you become a more settled comedian, that it's gonna be harder to want to basically like
To move.
yeah, to
Yeah.
move. So yeah, because of like my day job and stuff like this, the opportunity came to move to London. I was like, let's try it. Now is the time. Then I
Mm.
came, and then I thought I was a good comedian. Like I thought that, I'm already like peak.
Mm.
Although that's not the
Yeah. London would have been like, boom.
yeah, yeah, that's the thing. Like I came to London and everyone was just like, people would like, it would either laugh or just go like, no. No,
Really?
yeah, but like you
Really?
see on like people's faces where they're just like, I'm like, shit. And
Uh,
then, for a while, you're kind of like, oh, it's them, it's not me, I don't care. But then, in the other hand, you kind of care. Like, I kind of
yeah,
care because, like, I
yeah.
want people to like me. Although, again, I very much, I think one of the things that I've learned to understand is that not everyone's gonna like you. Like, actually, the biggest chances are most people are not going to like you.
Mm.
It's a smaller percentage of people that are actually going to like you,
Yeah,
but it's just about like finding those people.
yeah,
And I think this is like kind of, this is how I look at it now. Like this is my journey now, where I'm like, I still have on the story, and there is stuff that I want to do, because hopefully next year I'll be doing my first work in progress.
awesome.
And that's where I'm going to basically like take my, because I want to do one about like me, growing up. And I kind of want to do it in a Kevin Hart sort of way, where
Yeah,
it's like, I'm just going to talk about like my life story in chapters, where like the first one is going to be the beginning up to a certain point, and then I'll move on. Or maybe I'm thinking to do one with everything that's happened before until before what happened since I was a kid to when I started comedy, and then I'll just see what's happening next. Anyway,
yeah. That's
but
amazing. I'm excited. What is this going to be called, or is it
I haven't
still
decided yet.
okay?
That's the thing, because I have some names I've written down. I have some ideas I want to work with. I already know if I get to have like an intro song. I already know, and I want to make like a little
Oh,
video.
oh, cool.
Yeah, I'll show you before we wrap it up today. I'll show you the song, because I already know. Again, I have some ideas. I can't remember. I don't. I know I wrote down some names,
Yeah,
but I can't. I'm not sure what I wrote down. So yeah, we'll see that. Anyway, so yeah, that's the thing. So basically, because I want to do that, there are bits that I'm going to do only when it's like I have my, or I guess like my audience, people
yeah,
are like, oh, actually, I
yeah,
want to see this.
yeah,
But then, yeah, now when I go to shows, it's more about again, just trying to show people that there is some funny, or like I am funny because of like, here is a short version of like
yeah,
some things,
yeah,
and then if you want more of this, then that's what, like those are like my socials, or like that's what I'm gonna do
yeah,
next, or like
yeah,
here's what I'm up to. Because yeah, I think that's how London helped me, because it was kind of like, I think my dad had this analogy where he was saying that you can't piss against the rain.
yeah, yeah,
And I agree. I feel like that in many aspects of life, where it's kind of like, you although you see people, which again I agree, like I do personally think it's rude to be like, to look like angry at a comedy show, or like
yeah,
not laugh, because technically. But then in the other hand, is your right to, like, again, everyone has the right to be an asshole. That's
yeah,
just the way it is. You got to
yeah,
accept that. So yeah, that's the thing. Now, am I going to go like, oh, this is not fair, this is not right, I hate this? Or is it like, no, it's shit, I don't really like it,
yeah,
but I have no choice? And you kind of like, to get to where you want to get to where you get where people go, oh, I want to see you.
Yeah.
You have to, again, you almost have to do this work. It's literally like when you have like filtered water, you have the
Mm.
filter there, and you put loads of water in there, and then it slowly
Yeah.
drips
Yeah.
down to
Yeah.
the it gets filtered. So that's kind of how I see now audiences, where I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm just gonna try my best, see how you like it, and then if you do like it, then there's gonna be more.
Yeah, that's awesome. And
Thank you.
yeah, I think that sounds like such a healthy, strong journey as well. Also, you're talking about it in such a sustainable way because I feel like sometimes people have this like overnight attitude where it's like, you just become a success out of nowhere and
It'd
like
be
you can't
nice.
shooting star.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind.
When I was in fashion, my partner always used to say, you work a lifetime to become an overnight success. And it sounds a bit like that. Like your journey is like working consistently and like having the work ethic to be like, okay, how do I maintain this sustainably? So that when it does come, you have everything, like you have your core audience, you have the people that know you, how you take feedback, how you take criticism, so that you can continue to grow sustainably and not
Yeah.
like supernaturally.
Well, again, I think that's in so many ways where it's kind of like, yeah, I think it's like, what's your end game with this, and I think with me, it's all about like building the set community, or like making people be like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, cool, let's see, what's next. While I don't know, it's not, although again, I maybe it's a bit of jealousy because I'm like, I know I have no, also I have no energy to like try and make something go viral. I'd like to, like, again, if I could have success overnight, I would love for this to happen. I
Yeah.
would not say no to it.
Yeah.
But also I feel like, yeah, it's very unrealistic. And also I think, and this is something that I want to touch with you as well, about like, the fact that when I have to do all these different things, where it's like, now I have to, like, I'm studying again, and then I have to I have a
Yeah.
part time job during the day, and then it's comedy and it's the podcast. There is so much stuff that I kind of have to try and balance it in a healthy way. So I used to always be the guy who was like, oh, is there a comedy show happening 2 hours away from London in front of two people? I'm gonna go there.
Oh
Well,
yeah.
now I can't do it anymore because I've noticed that, you know, I when I burn out, I'm done.
Mm.
Like, it's gonna be, although I say I'm doing really well for 2 3 weeks,
Yeah.
for the next month I'm just gonna be a mess. I have to take time off. I have to, get like my head checked because of like all
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
things that are happening. So that was also part of the journey where I was like, I don't, this is not viable for me. Like, I need to find value. So for example, like tonight I'm going to do some new material at
Awesome.
the comedy night. And the only reason why I'm going there, or like the value that I'm getting from that, is I have some new bits that I want to try. I'm actually meeting Nathan there, and we're going to have a bit of a catch up
Awesome.
before the show and at the interval. And then it's gonna like basically get me prepped because I have some big shows coming in the next few weeks.
Awesome.
So I just want to like get the engine,
Going. Yeah.
going
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. And also,
Yeah.
it's fairly close, and my partner finishes work around the same time that I get out from the show, so
Oh,
we'll basically come
perfect.
home together.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you see, that's how I look at like things now. Where I'm like, I need to see precisely what I'm getting out of this. I can't just go on like, oh, is there a gig in Chesterfield?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just gonna, go for
No,
like
don't.
3 hours. And
Yeah. No. No.
yeah, or like
It's not
sometimes
worth
you
it.
get there and it's like, oh, by the way, the gig is canceled. And I'm like, well, thanks for the
The
notice. Yeah,
notification
and
that
now
you've
I'll have
just
another
traveled 3
three.
hours.
Yeah, I get home at like 2 in the morning. I'm like,
Oh
oh,
no.
I can't sleep at night, and I feel very miserable. I wonder why. And I'm like, yeah, maybe that's why. But
Yeah.
yeah, so what I was going to ask you now is that, what's it like for you then to, because you were saying before about how, you had your fashion brand for a bit. You've done that, and then, say things didn't work out, but then even now, like, being a poet, and then you worked in a telecom company. Now you do the finance
Yeah.
part-time, or like as a day job sort of thing. What's it like for you to then like have to, like, especially for someone who's, suffer with anxiety, especially like being diagnosed from such an early age? What's it like for you to then be like, oh, I've got like, my schedule is like, because my calendar, for example, is like 5 different colors, and it's for like 5 different jobs that I do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think my calendar is my best friend.
Nice.
Like 100%. Like I use that. But last year because I was working full time up until last year, and I was a marketing director at a finance firm. And I like had gotten 3 promotions in a year. I was really and everything that I wanted, I was there, and then but I was completely miserable. So when I quit my job and went surfing to try and figure out what I wanted to do, but I just like looked at I do a lot of reading now, looked at different books that would help me kind of structure my life in a way that was sustainable. Because for me, like, it's nice when the sun shines, but if the shines every day, it's called a desert. And if there's like if there's too much water, then it's a flood. You're in the ocean. You can't. There's nothing sustainable. So for me, I try and balance my life in a way that has sunshine, and has watering, and I take time to try and like give myself space. I have a super busy calendar, but I always factor in rest days. So like I actually have it in my calendar to be like, you're not going to talk to anyone for 4 hours on this day, or not look at your phone or do whatever. And it was really hard at first trying to transition into, especially in London, like where everything's like super hectic, da da da. Everyone's like go, go, go mode. You have to give 100%. You actually do not have to give 100%. Moving at 60 to 80 is like where I feel that I try and prioritize my time. Also, taking moments consistently in the day for like recentering myself. Like I have a motto to myself, like you can restart the day at any point. You can start your day at any point.
Yeah.
So if you've slept all day until like 4, 5 p.m. and it's 5 p.m., you can start. You can do whatever you want. You can go for a walk. You can do, and I think giving myself that freedom helped so much more with trying to build a career in 2024 as a poet, and also maintain just a life where I'm happy, where I prioritize relationships, certain friendships. I think the community that you have is so, so important, because when things are happening to you, the guidance and the support that you receive in terms of what people say will change the way that you interpret everything.
Yeah.
Like if you have people, like for example, I told you my friend was like, write a book. She saw that I wasn't in a good mental space, and she was like, write a book, write. And like having people like that encourage you and challenge you in a positive way completely transforms the way that you then make decisions for yourself. Even you saying you have a gig tonight, and then you're gonna come back with your partner, like that's somebody supporting you, even if it's not directly like, oh, is your partner gonna be like standing right in the front like looking, yeah, go, 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 like no, but having somebody who's like, okay, there's gonna be time that you get time to connect with somebody else after you've done something that means a lot to you. So I think structuring a life that accommodates balance, accommodates also time for inspiration, times for output, then also really transforms the experience. At least it has been for me. I'm only 1 year in. I'm like, next month is yeah, in 2 weeks is my anniversary of like 1 year of quitting my corporate
No
life.
way.
Yeah, and trying to figure out how I want to be a poet. So I'm quite early on my journey compared to other writers. But yeah, that's kind of the advice that I'd give. And
Nice.
yeah, and also I try and do a thing where, especially as a creative, something that we don't always take into consideration is the fact that we need to have points of watering, and then we have times of like actually producing. So if we're going to be looking at ourselves in that way, there are going to be times that we need to be inspired by new things. Some people just get into a routine and then they stick to the routine. Your routine needs to be like able to change. And like I every single month of the year, I write down at the beginning of the year all the things that I want to, like a new hobby for every month.
No
And
way.
it's a hobby that I try and that I can drop, and or something. If I'm gonna do something more seriously, I'll be like, okay, I need to create more space like the for this in my life. For example, surfing. I Last year I went and I started surfing because I was just like, that seems like a cool thing to do.
And if you actually keep it up,
Yeah, I'm going surfing next on Friday. I'm going to Portugal to go surf, and I'm going to surf camp and stuff, and
no
like
way.
spending time with people who I met surfing. All of it,
No, no, that's too good.
yeah, all of it has just been transformational. And I think like if I didn't have that outlet, or I was like somebody who's dreaming from my corporate desk, being like, one day I want to, you then kill the part of yourself that's creative. You create less opportunity for yourself to be
True.
inspired.
True.
You create less opportunity for yourself to grow, and also doing things for the sake of me. Like if I'm like, oh my gosh, I really love to write a story about, I don't know, write a story about everything that happened to me when I've gone for a bikini wax. That like I'm like, oh, that would be so cool. And then stopping, having a notebook, actually writing it out, then allows me to then navigate the rest of my life versus points where usually creative people you're like, I'm gonna do it. Postpone. You actually are hurting yourself as a creative person when you don't do what you should be doing creatively.
You know, there was a Jerry Seinfeld quote about how he was saying that even when you have like bad ideas, you should still write them down,
Yes.
because his analogy was that you almost have like a cannon in your head, and then basically if you keep that cannon like filled with, although it's say crap,
Mm-hmm.
you block the cannon
Yep.
from like pushing something else out.
Yep. Yep.
So that's why I kind of like I took it from that, every time I have an idea, although few days later I can open up my notes and I'd be like, this is one of the dumbest things I've ever seen in my life, but you still have to write it down, because, or like I still, and I do it now, where I still write it down, because it's about what if the next thing is good, but
Yeah.
now because I have this thing like stuck,
Yeah. Yeah.
the good thought is not coming out.
Exactly. I think 100%, like even just the confidence, it's a muscle. Being creative is a muscle, and trying new things is part of how that muscle works. Like if you're not exercising it, when the time comes that you need to use it, you won't have the strength that you need to be able to do it because you don't have that routine of confidence because we're really scared as creatives. We're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to share a part of myself with everybody, and everybody's going to have an opinion of it. And I don't know what everyone's going to say, and if they're going to hate me or if they're going to love me or if I'm just a weirdo. Like all these things that happen to us as creatives. But if you're used to just doing it when the time comes for you to do it, you do it. And like if you, regardless of whether it's good or it's bad, and like even going back to the Canon analogy, the Canon's still shooting.
Yeah.
Like it's not like, oh, we need to clean it all out. We need to do all the. There is so much more freedom when you know that it's ready to come and you're ready to produce and you're ready to create. Um, yeah,
Well, that was
yeah,
wonderful.
yeah.
Now, because yeah, so now before we wrap it up, I was just gonna check. Oh, actually, I want to ask you, um, how would you feel about doing this again, perhaps before the book comes out?
Yeah, I'd be so
We're
down for
doing a
this.
part two, perfect.
Yeah.
And then before we wrap it up, now I was gonna ask you, what's your socials? Where do people find you? How do anyone who wants to like check out your work, yeah, can keep in touch with you and get to see anything you're doing?
Awesome. Thanks. Thank you for having me. I cannot wait to come back. And to get in touch with me or to follow me, I'm a bit of an old lady, so I use Instagram. And my name is Tadiwanashe, but on Instagram it is Tadiwazara. Tadiwazara. And yeah, that's my Instagram handle. So you can find me on Instagram. I have TikTok, but I'm still trying to figure that out. So please don't look. But yeah, you can find me on Instagram, and yeah, I'm looking forward to being back. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Great, because I so did I, and sadly, if it wasn't for I have to do therapy, guys. That's why
We love
I have,
therapy.
yeah, and I have to start in 2 minutes. But if it wasn't for that, we would have continued, because there are still a lot of things that we have to unfold. But yeah, thank you for being
Thank
part of
you.
this.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
I told you it was good. I told you, and I hope you believe me, and I hope you enjoyed as much as I enjoyed recording this and putting it together. And yeah, look, that's it for now, folks. Look after yourselves, stay well, stay safe. And from me, Pickle and Sarma, until next week, stay skillful. Goodbye.